Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 US Open DFS Tactics show. We have quite a bit to get into, an interesting weather forecast. We need to find our 6K plays, our best pivots, our top fades. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best resource out there. Anything you want for golf gambling, it has lineup generators, ownership projections. It is simply the best tool out there. Go check them out. It is well worth your investment. In the description to the videos, there are links to my social media. This is where I place my betting cards for the golf content I create, including after the show tonight for the US Open, and any interesting research that I find throughout the week for golf and baseball content. In fact, I put a couple of notes out, 4 in total, 2 on Monday and 2 on Tuesday. So if you saw those notes, there are 12 players that qualify under all 4 criteria that I had put out on Twitter. So in the comments, or if you are watching live in chat, see if you can guess who some of those players are. But if you want to see some of that research that I do, make sure to give me a follow at the links in the descriptions. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. As I said, I want to hear from you all. Can you guess any of the 12 players that fit the criteria that I put out on social media? Who are your favorite 6K plays? What wagers do you have out already? I want to hear about all that. And then later on, when we start building lineups, throw out in chat who you want to see built around, or a combination of players if you're trying to figure out how to make a lineup around a certain player or players. So let's figure out our tactics for the DFS slate for the 2022 US Open. And we start with the mixed condition model that I made for the week. And there are a couple of things that I need to probably preface, in that I finished this last night and then looked at WinFinder again today, and it changed a little bit. So I always like to explain what I know I am weak to, or I didn't factor much at all, if anything, into a mixed condition model. A little bit of foreshadowing here. There is no wind in this mixed condition model, and that could be a bad thing. And we'll check WinFinder after we go through the price board and all that stuff. I even have the tee times set from PGA out and ready in case we want to figure out some of the best options considering the wind. So that's the first part of the potential pitfall of this data model. Is there no wind in it? So let's go through it here. We talked all week. It's a US Open. We know it's going to be difficult, so I put 10% in strokes gained total, difficult rounds to par. And you can absolutely make an argument that this needs to be 15%. I only had 10 because there were a lot of factors that I wanted to look at, and I wasn't able to include all the factors, knowing that this needed to be at least 10%. Strokes gained approach needs to be at least 15%. Precision is going to be a key. These greens are tiny. The wind's going to pick up. You have to be able to hit your greens, which we'll talk about later in the data model. It's just a ball striker's course. So 15% in strokes gained approach. 10% in strokes gained around the green in long rough. And I debated with myself back and forth if I wanted to use long rough or difficult to par. And I was using so much difficult to par in these other metrics that I decided to go with long rough just to hedge a little bit. Long rough is generally difficult anyway. So I went 10% strokes gained around the green long rough. The wind's picking up. It's going to be a tough course. You're going to have to be able to scramble around the greens, all that kind of stuff. So I put a full 10% in strokes gained around the green, as well as strokes gained putting. The last 36 rounds. So this is the one kind of outlier in this data model, in the sense that this goes all the way back to the 2019 U.S. Open, so a long while back, just because POA is unique. But we took a look at some putting statistics Monday night in the Data Dive show, especially at the end in the Excel portion. So I brought in as many rounds as I thought was necessary to get a baseline for all of the players this week. So 10% in strokes gained putting POA. I didn't add faster lightning because when I looked at the Pebble Beach U.S. Open, those greens weren't fast. Farmers, I think, were, but it's no guarantee that they're going to be fast, especially with the wind picking up. So I just put it on POA. No fast, average, nothing. Just straight up POA. And the reason I even added putting, because I normally don't like to, is that generally good putters on POA continue on and just putt well on POA regardless. And in fact, we saw that the winners of the POA U.S. Opens had some pretty good POA putting form coming in. So wanted to see who putt well on POA. 15% in opportunities and bogeys. So 5% opportunities gained when it's difficult and 10% avoiding bogeys when it's difficult. Now, throughout the leaderboard, or at least the top 20 or 25, it was fairly even between bogeys avoided and birdies gained, but the winners were absolutely more bogeys avoided. So I went 10% bogeys avoided and 5% who just gives themselves opportunities when it's difficult. Because if you're going to give yourself opportunities, eventually one or two of those putts fall, and that can be the difference in a tournament, especially when it's difficult, when par is generally a good score. We talked about driving distance Monday during the Data Dive show, and we saw how much driving distance mattered, especially recently in U.S. Opens. So 5% in driving distance. Greens in regulation, these are tiny. The ball strikers course, you're not going to want to be playing out of the rough a lot. You're going to at some point this weekend, hopefully weekend, but at some point during the 4 days or at least 2 days, you're going to be playing out of the rough. But the players that hit the greens when it's difficult the most are going to give themselves the best opportunities or the best chance to win. So 15% greens in regulation. So you can see 15% in strokes gained approach right here, 15% in greens right here. A ball strikers course, I am really, really heavily leaning into a second shot type player, guys who just hit their irons well. Then 5% also in scrambling. We mentioned this is U.S. Open. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have to work your way around trying to get some pars and such. And sometimes scrambling is not from around the green. So this is another metric that I can absolutely understand putting 10% in. I just ran out of percentage to use. But scrambling difficult to par, going to be very important. And then 10% in strokes gained par fours. We saw at the end of the show Monday night just how important par fours are to success, generally at any PGA tournament, but especially at a major and on a par 70 when there's only two par fives. Par fours are going to be very, very important. Again, I ran out of percentage. I would have loved to have split out the 450 to 500, even the 500 plus. Just didn't have the room. And there are other par fours here at the Country Club. The drivable short par four. There's a couple in between 350 and 400. So didn't want to neglect all the par fours. So 10% par fours. And that left me with par threes and par fives. And I took a quick look yesterday and early today, and I noticed that for U.S. Opens, the par threes were more important than the par fives, and that lines up with typically a par 70 when you have only two par fives but still four par threes. So I put the remaining 5% in par threes. So as I mentioned, the one weakness so far in this mixed condition model is the fact that there's no wind. Now, if par fives are extremely important, I'm going to be weak to that too in this data model. But there is the metrics, percentages, and thought process behind why I'm using them. So when I load the mixed condition model, again, purely from a numbers standpoint, my top 10 are Rory, JT, Scotty Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Shane Lowry, Sam Burns, Cameron Smith, Max Homa, Will Zalatoris, and Mito Pereira. Probably not a lot of surprise minus one player, and I'll get to him in a second. But, these guys have been playing great all year. You maybe might be surprised by Max Homa, but he's been playing some fantastic golf. And look, he has no weak statistic in the ones that I've brought into the mixed condition model. Will Zalatoris, Mito, the PGA, he really announced himself that he belongs. Should have won, made one bad swing and it cost him. So there's my top 10, and honestly, Sungjae is tied with Mito for 10th. I just stopped at Mito, but Mito and Sungjae are both tied for 10th. The notable exclusion is Jon Rahm. And do I think he's the 14th best in the field? No, I think he's clearly higher than 14th. He is getting brought down by two specific factors: strokes gained around the green and long rough, and scrambling, which scrambling can be attributed to putting. If he's not making putts, that's going to hurt your scrambling statistics. Now, on POA, he's generally very, very, very good. But scrambling is not just on POA. Now, if you wanted to get very specific, I could have went scrambling gained on POA. And you probably would have been, it would have been worthwhile to look at. I didn't look at it this week. But this number here is getting hurt by the fact that he was not putting well earlier this year. Particularly early, say January, February, when you are on Bermuda. So that's what's bringing him down. And then strokes gained around the green and long rough. Is what it is. It's showing pretty poorly, but you see the rest of the statistics are really damn good. It's Jon Rahm. 22nd in strokes gained approach is a little surprising. That's bringing down his value a little bit as well. I shouldn't say value, his ranking. But I just needed to clarify. Do I think Jon Rahm is literally the 14th best player in the field? No. It's getting brought down by especially this. So, but there's a look at my top 10. Let's bring up the ownership projections, again, per Fantasy National. And let's sort this on the salary board. So, we have 6 players in the 10Ks. Those are Scotty Scheffler, JT, Jon Rahm, Rory, Cam Smith, and Colin Morikawa. You can see Colin Morikawa is pretty far back in terms of ranking to the other 5. And we already talked about Jon Rahm. He shouldn't be 14th. But Colin Morikawa has traditionally not fared well chipping or putting on POA. Sometimes he can get hot, but generally it's not on POA. It is generally on bent, although POA is his best putting surface. I have seen him get the most hot on bent, and he's not been putting well at all lately. Heritage to almost 3, PGA 2.5, Charles Schwab 3.5. Now the big spike recently was on POA at the Genesis, so you like that. But the Memorial last year, bent. Sony was Bermuda, WGC Mexico. So it's a little of this everywhere. He's obviously very good when it's difficult. But the wind's also going to bring him down a little bit. We'll look at that here in a bit. But in the 10Ks, you have 2 players that are pivots that are not getting a whole lot of use. You have your number 2, number 6 projected owned players here in the 10Ks. So the number 2 most projected owned player, Rory McIlroy, makes a whole lot of sense coming off the wind. Well, it was a win in the wind. Coming off the wind at the Canadian. I mean, what's there to say? He's number one in my data model, so I'm going to be using him. Number one in strokes gained total when it's difficult. Number one in greens when it's difficult. Number two on par fours. Number three in avoiding bogeys. Longest driving distance. I mean, it's Rory. He should be one of the tournament favorites. I don't know if he should be the tournament favorite. Certainly one of them. And I'm going to use him. Can't argue with that. He is the number two most projected owned player. You also have Scheffler at 14%, John Rahm at 15%, JT at a little under 14%. So the two players that aren't getting any love are Cameron Smith and the aforementioned Colin Morikawa. And I can understand Morikawa a little bit, considering this is going to be very, very difficult. You're probably going to have to chip and putt, and that's not his strong suit. I can understand the caution with Colin Morikawa. I don't understand the caution with Cam Smith. Number 7 in strokes gained approach, third best when it's difficult. He hits his greens. He's great around the green, especially when it's difficult. Now POA putting can be suspect. He's not the longest driver of the golf ball, but it's not that he's incredibly short either. He's number one in opportunities gained. I don't understand why Cameron Smith is projected at 6%. If he is indeed at 6%, I'm going to use as much Cameron Smith as I can. Having said that, I don't think he's going to sit at 6%. Again, this is just per Fantasy National. I imagine in your big national GPP contests where a lot of casual players jump in for the majors, it's going to be very appealing for them to come down to Cameron Smith at 10,200 as opposed to spending up on a JT or John Rahm. So I don't see Cameron Smith being 6% owned, but if he is indeed, I mean, even if he's at 8 or 9%, I'm going to fire him up as much as I can. I don't understand why the no love for Cameron Smith is how I'll say it. So in the 10Ks, based on what I'm seeing, rankings, knowing what the wind is expected to be, projected ownerships, everything all together, Cameron Smith is my number one 10K play. A lot of that being predicated on the fact that he is so unique, especially in the 10Ks. He is the lowest 10K owned player at 6%. And it also helps that he is not going to break your bank either. I mean, he's more than 1,000 less than Scotty Scheffler. So I'll have Cameron Smith number 1, Rory number 2. I'll have JT number 3 in the 10Ks. I'll probably go John Rahm 4th. Again, he's higher than 14th in my opinion. So I'll go with him 4th. I'll go Scheffler 5th and Morikawa 6th, although you can convince me on swapping those two. Again, it's not that I'm down on Scotty Scheffler. He's just so expensive. And there's so much value lower in the price board. It's absolutely worth using Scotty Scheffler. There's so much value elsewhere that, I mean, if I have money for him, sure. But, I mean, he's projected more owned than Justin Thomas right now. So if I'm going to come up that high, I'm just going to go to Justin Thomas. And then we talked about Colin Morikawa and the hesitancy, or at least the understanding of the hesitancy there. So there's a look at the at the 10Ks. Let's move to the 9s. We got Victor Hovland, Xander, Jordan Spieth, DJ, Will Zalatoris, Patrick Cantlay, Hideki, and Shane Lowry. And you'll notice I have a couple of players unstarred here, even though they are more than top half of my rankings. Victor Hovland and DJ, that's part of the where they are or when they're teeing it up tomorrow, and we'll look at that at Windfinder. But I don't see this setting up well for Victor anyway. Again, we talked about you're going to miss greens. You're just going to, and he is absolutely atrocious around the green and putting. I was looking at Morikawa. He's atrocious around the green. Now, he's a pretty good putter on POA, but he's atrocious around the green. And the fact that he doesn't hit many greens in regulation, at least compared to others around his price point and the name recognition, Victor Hovland, the fact that he doesn't hit many greens means this is going to be brought into play even more, and this is by far his worst part of his game. He's gotten better at it, but he's still shit at it. I mean, just call it what it is. He's still really bad at it. This just does not feel like a Victor Hovland type event until he shows marked improvement in the around the green game. Now, the irons have been great, no denying that. He gives himself plenty of opportunities when it's difficult, but I am quite concerned about the around the green play. And even though he's a Euro, he generally doesn't play well in the wind, which is surprising, but he doesn't. So there's a lot of factors here that I think are hurting Victor Hovland. And to be honest with you, it seems like most of the analytic community is saying the same thing. He's only at 7%. So if you want to think that I'm a load of bullshit, you fire up Victor Hovland. You're going to be gaining a lot of leverage. I just don't think it's a good week for him. And then DJ, he's just not been playing well. You don't know where his mindset is, having gone to the live. I don't know. I don't want any part of it. He's been playing a little bit better of late, but the rest of the analytic community is the same. He's under 5% projected owned. So let's talk about the players that are getting used. And almost everybody in here is getting used at some form or fashion. So the most projected owned player makes a whole lot of sense. It's at 9,000. It's Shane Lowry, number 5 in my rankings. He's consistently one of the top players in my data model. Now the poor thing of Shane Lowry is his POA putting performance for the past couple of years, but literally everything else, top 5 in stroke gain approach. He's the best at avoiding bogeys, which is paramount in a U.S. Open. Top 5 in par 4 scoring. Top 5 in scrambling. There's a lot to like here with Shane Lowry. There's a reason he's the number 1 projected owned player. And then right under Rory, Rory is number 2. Right under him at just over 17% is Xander. And Xander's just solid. I mean, you know pretty much what you're going to get. Granted, at the Masters, it wasn't very good. I think it was the Masters. Maybe it was the PGA. There was one major. He just had a pretty poor showing. Yeah, the Masters. I mentioned that he's just solid. You can count on Xander, and then he goes out and misses the cut. But generally, Xander's just solid. You know what you're going to get. Eventually, he's going to break through for a win and a major. Time will tell, but it's going to happen. I mean, he's great at the par 3s. Very good with the irons. Now the scrambling can be suspect. So it's Xander. If you're going to use him, you're setting yourself up for a 5v5, but it's well worth it. He's just a solid player. So elsewhere, let's see. Patrick Cantlay's only at 9%. Hideki's only at 11%. I kind of feel the same about Patrick Cantlay. He's solid, but just like Victor Hovland, not necessarily as much as Victor Hovland, but I don't know. I have an uneasy feeling about Patrick Cantlay. He just hasn't impressed me lately, to be honest with you. Yes, he played well at the Memorial, but he generally plays well at the Memorial. He looked terrible at the PGA. The Players wasn't good. The Masters wasn't particularly good. I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling about Patrick Cantlay. Hey, P, thanks for jumping in chat. How's your week been? Are you ready for all of the U.S. Open DFS contests that you're in? You got any wagers? But good to see you. Thanks for jumping in chat. So like I said, I'm just kind of weary on Patrick Cantlay. I love Will Z. Jordan Spieth's okay, although I've heard that he is battling an illness. I can't confirm that, but I've heard some murmurings. So, I'm okay either way. You know, if he happens to fit in a team, fine. But you know, at 12.5%, I can also fade him. And then let's see. Anyone else we haven't talked about in the 9Ks? Not really. Like I said, I'm off of Victor. It just does not feel like a good Victor week. DJ, I don't know where his mindset is. Kind of weary on Patrick Cantlay. I don't mind Hideki. I love Shane Lowry, even though he's so chalky. But yeah, there's a look at the 9Ks. Let's move to the 8s. I'm not going to cover the names of them all. You've got two players here that are, three players, in the 8s that are pivots, including one in basic pivot for the contest. So you've got Brooks at 5.5%. Yes, it's a major. You can never really count Brooks out, but again, he's just not been good lately. And he's not good in the wind. The players, the most recent example. I mean, the PGA was missed the cut at the Masters, missed the cut at the Players. So again, I'm just not there. No, can't play for me. Very good. I like that little play on words, P. That might get stolen. I may attribute it to you, but that might get stolen. Very good. Very good. I don't feel Patrick Cantlay this week. But Brooks, I feel the same way. I just don't have a good feeling on Brooks. And then I'm going to skip the other pivot 8K. I'm going to come to the true pivot of the entire contest, really. It's Tyrrell Hatton. He's at 2.5% in the 8Ks. And I'm generally one that backs Tyrrell Hatton. I think he's quite underrated. And last week, he really blew up. Fortunately, I didn't have as much Tyrrell Hatton exposure that I thought I was going to. But, I mean, he just did not play. It's not even that they didn't play well. He just didn't play. Brooks changed a bunch of equipment, I read. Okay. See, that's I feel like I might have heard that, but I didn't, put it all together or think of it while I was talking about him. Interesting. Do you have any idea what he changed to? Because he's always on the Srixon commercials for the golf balls, but I feel like, didn't he always play Mizuno, or did he play Titleist irons? I can't remember. But like Tyrrell Hatton, the Canadian was just poor, and I backed him quite a bit at the PGA. Was really happy with that. I backed him at the Wells Fargo. That was middling, but I was backing him last week too, and it really didn't happen for him. Now this U.S. Opens generally seem like they fit Tyrrell Hatton because he is a scrambler. He is good at avoiding bogeys. Until you look at that, this is surprising to me, and that's why it's being brought down quite a bit. When I think of Tyrrell Hatton, I imagine him scrapping out pars, and that's just not what it is, at least lately. So I'm pretty down on Tyrrell Hatton, and this will be the week that he performs very, very well, just to stick it to me for 2 straight weeks. But I'm out on Tyrrell Hatton. So we talked about Brooks. We talked about the pure pivot in Tyrrell Hatton. Let's talk about the third player in the 8Ks that's not getting a whole lot of use that I love, and it's Billy Horschel. I love Billy Horschel this week. Even though we're not on Bermuda and the irons can get pretty bad, he is great at avoiding bogeys. This is what you need at a U.S. Open. He is number 1 in strokes gained around the green. He's top 15 when it's difficult. He's top 10 in giving himself opportunities. This is all about the around the green. It's the same reason why I love Cameron Smith. I love Billy Horschel. It's all of the scrambling, the putting, the working your way around the green. Now, yes, if the irons are truly, 76th, middle of the pack, it's not going to be a great week for him. But I really, really like Billy Horschel. Same way I like Cameron Smith, and they're both at 8% ownership. Like Cameron Smith's, I think, right at 7%. So I love Billy Horschel. I'm going to ride or die with Billy this week. I just see a lot there, especially since everybody around him is so chalky. This is where I'm going to be gaining a whole lot of leverage and win equity on people. Even if he doesn't win the tournament, if he finishes top 10 at an 8K price, mid 8K, but 8K price, at 8% ownership, when you literally have Matt Fitzpatrick double his projected ownership right under him. Fitzpatrick's at 16%. Berger, 13.5. Sam Burns, 15%. Finau, 16%. We talked about Brooks. He's a pivot, but Cameron Young, 13.5. Joaquin Niemann, 13.5. And I'm not saying these are bad plays by any means. But when you're getting sometimes half the ownership on Billy Horschel, I'll take that chance. I'll take that chance. It allows me to use other chalky plays like a JT, like a Shane Lowry. So I really love Billy Horschel. In the rest of the 8Ks, I love Joaquin Niemann. He's sitting at 13.5%. Not going to be able to get off that. I love Joaquin Niemann. Cameron Young, like Cameron Young. Berger's fine. Fitzpatrick's great. But I'm highlighting all this for Billy Horschel because most of these players are, 13 to 14% projected owned. Fitzpatrick's at 16%, and Horschel's at 8%. Brooks went back to TaylorMade, M5, and Pro V1. Okay, yeah, I know he was strict. I think he was using Strixon for a bit, or at least he was in their commercials. And then I did not know he was a TaylorMade guy for the driver. So that'll be interesting to see. But he generally doesn't play well in the wind either. So I still have my reservations on Brooks, but thanks for either, looking that up or knowing offhand and putting it in chat. I appreciate it, B. So, like I said, elsewhere in the 8Ks, I love Neiman. Young's fine. I love Fitzpatrick. I love Berger. Burns is fine. But all of these guys are so chalky, I'm going to use Horschel and ride or die with Billy this week. We'll move to the upper sevens, and you've got 3 players that are getting a whole lot of love here and some very big pivots. So the one high 7K player that's getting a whole lot of love is Sung Jae. I love Sung Jae too this week. This is why I'm so high on Billy Horschel. It allows me to use chalkier options elsewhere in the price board. I love Sung Jae this week. Again, he's kind of like Billy. If the irons aren't there, it's going to be a struggle, but very good around the green, very good scrambling. So you see the type of players I'm gravitating towards this week. Yes, you're going to have to hit your irons, but if you're not an iron player, don't forget Paul Casey has withdrawn. But if you're not an iron player, you better be able to scramble. You better be able to scramble. You better be able to avoid bogeys. It would help if you putt well, but as long as you're scrambling. And Sung Jae is very good when it's difficult. So really like Sung Jae. He's at 16.5%. A lot of people like Sung Jae. You've got Mito at 14.5%. And 13% Corey Connors. Mark, it has been a long time, man. How have you been? Hope things are well. Lucas Herbert, I haven't got to the 6K yet, but you are taking my thunder, my friend. I've been doing well. Hopefully you have as well. But I am feeling the same positivity on Lucas Herbert. I don't know if I will say top 25, but when we get to the 6Ks, I'm going to mention Lucas Herbert. So elsewhere in the sevens, like everyone knows, I love Aaron Wise. He always rates well in my model. We saw that he plays very well when it's difficult. So yes, him being 15th might be a tad bit high. The POA putting scares you a whole lot. But look at the top 10s in these stats. Number 7, strokes gained approach. Number 10 in greens when it's difficult. Number 10 in strokes gained total difficult. Aaron Wise has a lot of very good statistics here when it's difficult. And he is sitting at just under 12%. So while he's not a pivot, he's not chalky either. I really like Aaron Wise. But I mentioned it Monday night in the Data Dive show. I've got a sneaky suspicion on Tommy Fleetwood. I don't know why, but Tommy's talking to me. Fairway Jesus, he's talking to me. Now we'll figure out if it's divinity or if it's demonic. Maybe I'm just hearing voices, but Tommy Fleetwood's at 11%, so I'm not the only one that's seeing something with Tommy Fleetwood. Again, around the green, scrambling. The irons, I think, are just better than what this is showing. The putting is okay, not great. I have a really, this is a gut feeling for me on Tommy Fleetwood. And I understand if you don't, it's well known. He just does not play well here over in the States. I get it. The results don't match. Something's talking to me about Tommy Fleetwood. So I'm a ride or die with Billy, and I'm going to have some Tommy Fleetwood for sure. I'm out on Answer. Louis, I'm normally lukewarm on. I mean, he is the best putter on POA in this field, bar none. I mean, he has putt POA amazingly in the past 2 years. The irons have not been there. He just hasn't been hitting greens. If you want to believe in putting, Louis would be a fine play, and Louis is only at 8%. I can't get there. Especially with the health concerns in the past year or so. Let's see, elsewhere in the upper sevens, I mean, Taylor Gooch, 6.5. Again, like DJ, I don't know where his mindset is coming off the live. Answer, 4%. Bryson, 1.5%. No thanks. So in the upper sevens, Aaron Wise, Sung Jae, and Tommy. Love Sung Jae, he's really chalky, but I like Aaron Wise, I like Mito, and I like Tommy. Let's move to the low sevens. And low sevens, you've got one player, that is getting a whole lot of use. You have some guys with middling exposure, but one player with a whole lot of love. It's Davis Riley. Okay, I can understand it. I mean, he's top 40 in my rankings. He's been playing very well as of late. I understand. He's in great form. 5 straight top 15s. Yeah. The irons are red hot, scorching in fuego. Yeah. I don't know. It's a good play, but, he hasn't putt well historically on POA. Scrambling can be an issue. Now, he's been great with the greens, and he's been pretty good when it's difficult, but the scrambling and the around the green kind of give you some pause. DJ looked pretty good last week. Sure. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of pressure. When you're playing for whatever buku's money and don't have a lot of pressure, and you're facing the competition that he was, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. I just don't. But here in the low sevens, Riley's the only one above 10%. You've got HV3 at 9.5 and Russell Henley at 8.5. I like HV3 quite a bit. I'll be using some HV3. I know Tom Hoagie is one spot above him in the numbers rankings. I like HV3 a whole lot more than Tom Hoagie. Part of that is the tee time and the split that he has. But I like HV3 more than Davis Riley. I understand the love for Davis Riley. He's in great form. But seeing him at 13%, I can pump the brakes. I'm not going to say it's a full fade, but I'm absolutely going to limit my exposure if my contestants or if my opponents are going to Davis Riley, and I like Harold Varner more than Davis Riley anyway. Elsewhere in the low sevens, Justin Rose, 7.5%, Patrick Reed, 7.5%. Patrick Reed fits the criteria. If you're not going to hit your irons, you better be good putting and scrambling and such, but his game's just been so bad I can't even go there. Let's see, elsewhere, except Straka's fine. I know I have him starred, but he's just kind of fine. I really do like Munoz at 7,400, top 25 in irons. Pretty good when it's difficult. Very good scrambler, good at avoiding bogeys. I like Sebastian Munoz. Give him a look. He's at 8%. But a lot of these players are, just pure pivots. Sergio, 3%. Tom Hoagie, for what it's worth, right under 4%. Jason Kokrak, 3. Tringali, 1.5. Adam Scott, 4. I'm not in love with any of these players, but if you have a strong feeling about them, okay, Like, if there's anybody that I would be the strongest on, it'd be Gary Woodland. And then even then, it's just kind of Woodland sits at 4%, so I don't hate the play. But I mean, you see here, I'm not in love with it either. He's been bad putting on POA. Now, granted, he won the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach on POA, so this is why I don't generally like depending on putting as a statistic a lot, because it's just so fickle. So there is a look at the low sevens. I'll also mention Patrick Rogers right at 7K. There's a lot to like with Patrick Rogers. I was on him last week. He played really darn well. He hits a lot of greens, and he is very good putting on POA. Now, the irons need to not be 60th, but if he is indeed hitting his greens and he's putting at the level he has, he's pretty good at avoiding bogeys. He doesn't give himself the most opportunities. I get it. But at a projected ownership of 4%, I don't mind Patrick Rogers at all either. So I'll mention him at the $7,000 price. We move to the sixes, and there are three players that I want to highlight for you all. And Mark stole my thunder. Damn it, Mark, but it's a very, very astute observation. I love Lucas Herbert. I love Lucas Herbert. And the reason being, he's right there at 68. His irons have been terrible. He hadn't hit any greens. But what have we seen of players that haven't hit their irons very well and, haven't hit greens? He hasn't putt the best. Number 7 in strokes gained around the green in long rough. He plays really darn good when it's difficult. He scrambles very well, and he avoids bogeys. That's a very damn good combination for a U.S. Open. The irons will absolutely have to be better. But at 6,800, don't be surprised if Lucas Herbert is your 6th of 6 to make the cut and really get you those weekend points. Like I said, Mark seems pretty bullish on him on that top 25. Don't know if I'll go that far, although I can absolutely see it. I mean, he won at the Bermuda, and the Bermuda had terrible conditions. The conditions this week at the Country Club aren't projected or forecast to be like that, but it's not necessarily a whole lot better either. His win at the Bermuda was in atrocious conditions. He loves playing in atrocious conditions. And you see here, he gains almost a stroke and a half in windy conditions. The POA is his worst putting surface, but I mean the putter is white hot right now. Memorial, he gained 9 at the PGA. He gained 8.5 at the Arnold Palmer. Now these are bent in Bermuda, so not POA, but there's a whole lot to like with Lucas Herbert there. He rates out so low for me because I'm always a strokes gained approach, greens, iron type player. But this week, a U.S. Open, you're going to have to be good around the green. And for sure, Lucas Herbert is one of the better short game players on tour. So there's a reason for the love. I want to highlight 2 more players for you all. The first one is Adria Arnaud, the Spaniard, coming from what was the tournament? There was one at the DP World Tour last week. Him and Ryan Fox both played extremely well. I think Ryan Fox top 5'd. Adria Arnaud top 20 that event, coming over here. And look at these stats. Now, he doesn't have a lot of tournaments. I'm putting that out there right now. He does not have a lot of tournaments. But he played at the PGA, and he played it well. Played it extremely well. So I really like Adria Arnaud. I mean, he played the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, and his irons have consistently been positive, even coming over to the States. I'm not advocating that you go and put him in every single lineup. It's not what I'm saying. You can call it Nick's dumbass 6K play this week, like Brian Stewart most of the time. like the 6K plays I usually throw out, although Luke Donald has worked out a time or two. But I really do like Adria Arnaud this week. Take a look at him if you're needing a little bit of price savings. The guy's in great form. He's made, I think, 5 cuts in a row worldwide. He won on the DP World Tour in early May. So a lot to like there with Arnaud. Luke. Hey, it's worked out once, and it hasn't worked out once, so I'm going to take my even and move on. But the third and last player I want to highlight for you all, again, in the same vein as Lucas Herbert, in the same vein as Louis Oosthuizen in the form of putting, Denny McCarthy. Very, very good scrambler. Yes, the irons are bad. He hasn't hit greens. Number 5 in POA putting, arguably the best putter on tour. Number one in scrambling when it's difficult. 23rd in strokes gained total difficult to par. In this elite field, Denny McCarthy's top 25 in total performance when it's difficult. Top 15 strokes gained around the green in the rough. Again, if you're not hitting your irons, you better be damn good around the green, difficult, and avoiding bogeys if you're going to compete at a U.S. Open. That's what Denny McCarthy does. Again, if you're coming into the 6Ks, if you need some price savings, I don't recommend it. I have Chris Goddard starred because he's kind of in the top half. I'm not coming down any further than Denny McCarthy. I can't do it. And I don't mind coming to Denny McCarthy, but a lot of times I like to pride myself in finding a 65, 64, maybe even a 6,000 play for you all. Not this week. Just stick to the known commodities. The lowest I'm going is Denny McCarthy. I really do like Adria Arnaud, and I like Lucas Herbert, even though he is not starred. I do like Lucas Herbert. In the 6Ks, if you're coming down here, there is nobody, and I mean nobody, above 5.5%. So your fellow contestants are bottoming out at Brian Harmon at just under 10% at 7K. So again, if you're willing to dip your toe in the 6,000s, and you shouldn't do it all the time, not in every lineup, but take a look at Adria Arnaud, take a look at Lucas Herbert, take a look at Denny McCarthy, especially if you're needing to squeeze in, maybe you're trying to squeeze in a JT and a Cam Smith, or you're trying to squeeze in that Xander, Will Zalatoris, Shane Lowry trio. Take a look at those guys in the upper 6s. If you're trying to build around that. All right, so I've been talking for a whole long time. I can do that. So let's look at Windfinder. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. But what I am seeing right now, if this indeed holds, and we know weather never changes, so we can expect this to be 100% up to the minute when they tee off tomorrow. But if it is indeed this calm in the morning and then picking up to gusts of mid-20s to upper 20s, then this is a severe Thursday AM favor. I mean, severe Thursday AM favor. And then you look at Friday, everybody's dealing with wind. But the Friday PM is dealing with less sustained wind. Now, they're going to get their gusts, but they're getting the gusts the same as the morning. So, again, if this holds, I'm seeing a pretty severe Thursday AM, Friday PM split. There it looks to be a little bit of rain in the forecast on Friday. Mark, you might be able to help me out with that, being up there. But, yeah, I'm seeing a big favor of Thursday AM, Friday PM. And then the weekend, Saturday, it looks like the Open Championship over in Scotland or Ireland, and then Sunday, more wind, difficult, high of 60. So, but for your DFS contest, your lineups to get 6 of 6 through, I'm putting a pretty big favor on Thursday AM, Friday PM. Because of that, I'm going to close this out. Let's go to the leaderboard. Figure out some of these players that we've been talking about. Patrick Rogers tees off very early in the morning. Denny McCarthy tees off very early in the morning. Wyndham Clark, if you're a believer there, Colin Morikawa, John Rahm, Siwoo, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, Davis Riley, Billy Horschel, another reason why I'm really high on Billy, Patrick Cantlay, Daniel Berger, Rory, Hideki, Xander, HV3, Munoz, Kisner, Henley, Harmon, Neiman, Cam Young, Will Zalatoris, Aaron Wise. You see why I've been higher on these players than maybe all things considered I should be, because of the heavy favor of Thursday AM, Friday PM I'm seeing. That's why I'm liking this side and these players a whole lot more. There's Goddard. That's why I had him start. He's teeing off in the morning. So those are the players that, to me, have a pretty significant advantage, especially tomorrow. Let's move to Microsoft Excel very quickly. So let me skew the vision, switch that over, and bring up this. All right, so let me sort this real quick, and then we'll start making some lineups. So sort, well, you son of a bitch, always does that. There we go. Sort by price. That's column C. Don't mind me, I talk to myself all the time. I'm not going crazy at all. All right, so for those who play tiers, and again, I'm not a specialist in tiers or anything like that. Damn it. Now I got to freeze these panes. I'm sorry. I thought I had this all prepared, and clearly I don't because I'm losing my mind. Okay, for those who play tiers, and I'm not an aficionado on tiers, I can just go by the assumed classic percent ownerships. But in tier 1, you got Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, John Rahm. I'll take Justin Thomas, probably the safest bet, especially if he's the lowest owned. Tier 2, Rory, Cam Smith, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, and Jordan Spieth. It's Rory for me, number one player in my model. Although if you want to be unique, take a look at Cam Smith. Tier 3, Xander, DJ, Will Zalatoris, Patrick Cantlay, and Shane Lowry. I see an argument for Xander and for Will Zalatoris. I'm going to go Shane Lowry, but I don't think you're wrong taking Will Z or Xander. No on DJ and no on Cantlay for me. Tier 4, Hideki, Joaquin Neiman, Cameron Young, Brooks, Billy Horschel, Daniel Berger, and Sam Burns. As much as I love Billy Horschel in Classic, I'm not there on tiers. So I'm going to go either Hideki or Joaquin Neiman. I really like Joaquin Neiman. Sam Burns would be a fine play. Berger's a fine play, but I'm probably going to go Joaquin Neiman. Tier 5, we've got Matt Fitzpatrick, Tony Finau, Max Homa, Terrell Hatton, Corey Connors, Mito Pereira, and Aaron Wise. As much as I want to take Aaron Wise and be the ultimate fanboy, the best play is probably Matthew Fitzpatrick. Tony Finau's fine too. Max Homa's a fine play as well. I'm going to take Fitzpatrick. Tier 6, Tommy Fleetwood, Sung Jae, Aaron Manser, Louis, Taylor Gooch, Seamus Power, Keegan. If the best play is probably Sung Jae, Louis has the major prowess, always top fiving or whatever. But again, and I imagine this in tiers contests as well, I think Tommy's going to be unique, and Tommy's speaking to me. He's speaking to me, so I'll take Tommy. All right, so there's a look at the tiers contests. Let's start working on some classic lineups here. All righty. If we're going to start building some chalky lineups and how to combat those, let me get everything situated here. If we're going to build this chalky lineup, well, we're going to have to start with the most obvious. That's Rory. And they're going to go to the most projected owned player in Shane Lowry. That's probably where they're starting their team. If they're dipping or if they're going to the 10Ks, and we've already established they're bottoming out at Brian Harmon. So that means they have 3 positions to fill in their lineup at about 7,800. It all kind of depends on the style of team that they're making. If they want to try to fit in as much high-priced players as they can, they'll go Davis Riley here. That means they have 8,100 per. They could go Keegan Bradley. He's at 12.5%. Instead, I'm going to go with Sung Jae. That leaves them 86. which is Billy Horschel's not getting a whole lot of love, but Matthew Fitzpatrick is. So there's a look at a fairly chalky lineup, and good God, it's chalky. 15% projected match in your big GPPs. A fine lineup. It would be good for a double up, I think. I'm not crazy about Brian Harmon, but this shell, this core here, I would expect to do well in a double up, but in a big GPP, that's hard to swallow on a 15%er. Now, if they're going to make a different style of lineup, let's say they're trying to go a bit more balanced, they're going to probably go something to the effect of Xander, Will, I guess it would help if I could spell and type Xander, Will. I use Shane Lowry. They might try to squeeze in Shane Lowry into this lineup, but instead, let's come down to like Tony Finau maybe, and then they can come to a Mito. That's at, they're sitting at 7,600 per, essentially. Like, I know we just use Sungjae. I try to use different names, but they could go Sungjae, and at 75 is Keegan Bradley. So there's a look at a balanced lineup that some of your fellow contestants are building. That's at 15.5% as well. Pretty ugly to stare at if you're trying to be unique. So I'll build a couple of lineups here, and if you're in chat, if you want to try to build around a player or two, throw them out. But I'm going to show you what I've been kind of doing, and I mentioned that I have no problem dipping my toe into the 6Ks. I don't want to go crazy. I'm not going to Luke Donald 6K anybody, like 6,000 bare minimum. But I said I really am high on Adria Arnold, so I've been comfortable going down to him every once in a while, and that allows me to come up and do something like a Cameron Smith, who I'm very, very high on. Cameron Smith, and now I can take some chalk in a Xander or a Will Zalatoris or even a Shane Lowry. For this exercise, to use some different names, I'm going to go Cameron Smith, Hideki, and I'm higher on Shane Lowry, I'm higher on Xander. I'm just trying to use some different names here. So I'll go Cameron Smith, Hideki, and then I'm going to try to squeeze in a Joaquin Niemann as well into this higher priced shell, have a kind of a Stars and Scrubsy type look. I've got two players to fill out that are at least average 7,500. I mentioned Davis Riley, been playing great. I think he's a fine play. I'm really high on Harold Varner, if I could talk. So that gives me 7,700. That's who I've been talking about all week, essentially. Tommy. This is a lineup that is sub 10%, which is going to be very difficult to do in a major style contest where you have all of these popular plays up in here. I don't want to merge. All of these popular plays, and yet I was able to find in a lineup that is 9.5, and sure, it's a whole lot more speculative. I get it. You're coming down for a European Tour, a DP World Tour player, a Spaniard, Tommy Fleetwood. His struggles in the States have been well documented, but I mean, Joaquin Niemann's been playing great. How can you argue with Cameron Smith's year? Hideki, if he ever putts, he's one of the best players on the planet. So that's a lineup that is, again, speculative, but one that I would absolutely feel comfortable putting in to a big GPP. Let's see, if you want to go more into the balanced style of build, I mentioned how I'm not crazy about Victor Hovland, but you could start there. This just doesn't feel like a good Victor week. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be a tad bit chalky. I'm going to start with Will and Shane Lowry. And yes, this is really, really starting chalky. I understand that. But where I'm going to gain my my uniqueness is where I'm bottoming out. I am going to bottom out at 74 for Sebastian Munoz. And now I have three players in that average, the low 8s that I can take. So if I want to go one more time in these 7s, I can go like an Aaron Wise. And now I'm at 8,300 per. Sam Burns and Tony Finau, those are very chalky, but that's another style of lineup that you can work around. This is a whole lot more chalky than I'd be comfortable with, but something that you can do. Or, I mentioned I love Billy Horschel this week. You can go Billy Horschel, 7,900's Bryson, no thanks. You can go Corey Connors, you can go Mito. Like, there's a 12.5. It's not great, but it's certainly not the 15% or the 14.5 we just saw either. So that's a couple of different styles of lineups that I like. Now, if we want to go true calls and just throw our money to the wind, let's do a special here. Denny McCarthy and Lucas Herbert. Now we're talking. Now this is true calls style right here. Look at that. We've got 9,000 per we can spend. Holy mackerel, we can be somebody. Let's go Justin Thomas. Who else are we going to splurge on here, chat? We got Justin Thomas, and we got the 2 6Ks. With this, that gives us the capability to really take some chalk if we want to. But I'm thinking like Justin Thomas. Me personally, I would go Cameron Smith just to be ultra unique. But I'm going to put in Rory just to show you that you can still take a chalky player or two, and still be fine. Like, we go JT, Rory, and then again at the 7,500s, I'll say I'm not in love with the play, but you could go like Gary Woodland. Again, not in love with it. I'm going to use Harold Varner again just to try to stay unique. You could use Tom Hoagie. I'm higher on Harold Varner. 7,800 is Aaron Wise or Mito. I've been touting Tommy Fleetwood all week. So there's another sub 10% lineup. If you're not a believer in Tommy, you can go with Mito. That's a little bit over 10%. That's a true calls fashion right there. Do your 2 6s and splurge on JT and Rory. What wagers do you all have? Mark, did you actually put in the top 25 Lucas Herbert wager? I'd be interested to know what odds you got on that, because I imagine they'd probably be pretty good. I bet Adria Arnault top 20. I believe that was at 6 or 7 to 1. So felt okay with that one. And then I've got my win wagers, and I'll put my entire betting card up on Twitter after the show later on this evening when I get done with submitting my lineups and all that stuff. But clearly I have a bet on Tommy Fleetwood. I've been really high on him this week. Everybody knows my 2 FOMOs. It is what it is. Although Taylor Gooch leaving might save me some money now. He could go out with a bang and give me my money back for betting on him this whole time. That's probably not going to happen, but I wish it would. But what kind of wagers do you all have coming into it? What players are you all thinking about using in DFS? So, Mark, it was great to see you again. Don't be a stranger. It's been a while. P, thanks for jumping in chat like you always do. Guys, it's appreciated. Always enjoy the interaction. And I appreciate you all tuning in, watching, listening, all the support. Now that it's been over a year, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. Looking forward to more. So for all of the wagers you've made this week for the U.S. Open, for all of the DFS contests you've entered this week for the U.S. Open, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.